you'll see on the crankshaft journals, on some of them, they've got a little bit of a ridge. So we need to polish these up and make them as smooth as they can be. We're going to take 3 different grits of sandpaper with some WD-40 after we've cleaned them off. We're going to start with 800 grit. Then we're going to do it with 1,000 grit. And then we're going to finish it with 1,500 grit. So that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to polish up this crankshaft journal and get them nice and smooth. And we want them to almost look like glass. So we're going to take some 800 grit sandpaper. We're going to soak it down with WD-40. Going to put some WD-40 on the actual journal here, and we're just going to wrap this thing around. Okay, just wrap your sandpaper around like that. And then I'm going to take this piece of, actually it's hockey tape. It's black hockey tape. I just cut a strip, fold it in half, and I'm going to use that to wrap around here. And I'm going to wrap it around twice to hold that sandpaper in place. And then we're just going to simply work that back and forth. And we're just going to go ahead and keep sanding that until we get all of those ridges out. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on there, just enough to turn that sandpaper. And you don't want to keep that ribbon in the same place the whole time. You want to move that around, so back and forth. Make sure you get a nice even sanding. All right, that should be good. Let's see how it looks. Yeah, we've got those ridges out of there now. It's looking real good. So basically that's the process. You just start with 800, get the ridges out of there so your fingernail's not catching on it, and then just do another round of that with 1,000 grit and then 1,500 grit. And then we'll just take some metal polish at the last step and just polish it up with a cloth real good. And I want to make sure that these go in with no grease. So we're not going to put any grease, any assembly grease in here. We're just going to go ahead and press these down in until they lock into position. And that one seated a little bit low on that side, so I need to pull that back up. Let me just tap that down a little bit with a rubber mallet. It's sitting in there good. Got flush on both sides there. That looks great. It's important when you're putting these in to make sure that you're putting them in. They're sitting right on top of the oil holes where they should be. So we're just going to go ahead and get all of our bearings and the engine block put in here. And it's just a matter of just lining them up. And got this little tab on there. And you know that that tab goes on this side because in the block there's a tab. So I'm just going to lay these on here so that I know that they're going in the right way and I don't forget about it later. Okay. We're just going to press that down. It should pretty much lock into place. We want to make sure that's lined up really good. That looks good there. It's even with both sides. Just snaps into place. And you can press it a little bit to make sure it turns up so it's sitting flush on both sides there. So those are looking good. Looks beautiful. Make sure there's no debris under the bearing before we put it in. We did clean those out pretty good, but you never know. You turn your back and something gets in there. Again, we're not putting any assembly grease down before we put the bearings. We're going to put the assembly grease on top of the bearings. So before we put in the crankshaft, then we'll put the assembly grease on there. But last thing you want is to have assembly grease underneath your bearing, because that's going to cause your bearing to spin. You definitely do not want that. Yeah, that's great. Okay. Verify that all the oil holes are lined up the way they should be. And they are. And now we can go ahead and set our crankshaft back on there. And then we'll put the caps back on. We'll use some flexi or some plastic gauge and make sure the tolerance is set the right way.
Here I'm slathering on a whole bunch of Permatex Ultra Slick assembly lube on the top side of the bearings. Remember, we don't put any on the bottom side, and it's important to have it slicked up really good before we put that crankshaft back in. So now we'll go ahead and lay that crankshaft in the bearings, give it a few turns, and she is good to go.
Now, one thing that's really, really important when you're putting your engine back together, it's really important that you use a good assembly lube. And so on all of these, I am putting a decent amount of assembly lube on all the parts of the bearings. And that's really important for break-in. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put a little bit more on there. But you don't want to use just regular motor oil. You want to use assembly lube, because motor oil will just drain off the surfaces to the lowest part possible. This assembly lube sticks pretty good on there, so it will stay in place. So I'm going to go ahead and put some on both parts of the bearing and the journal. Make sure we've got really good lube on there. The last thing I want is for this thing to get bound up and start breaking up on me. Okay.
We got the crankshaft all polished up. We set it back in after we put the bearings in the bottom, put the bearings in the top caps. And now we're just putting the top caps on. And you'll see that on each one of these journal caps, there's an arrow pointing towards the front of the engine. Another way you can tell is when you put these on, the little notch in the bearing on the top cap should line up with the notch on the bottom part bearing. So we're just getting those put on here, and now we're just going to go ahead and get the bolts put in. I'm just going to finger tighten these at first, and then I'll come back with the torque wrench and get these torqued down.